Hey everybody, I'm JJ Johnson. You're watching Reality Survival. So today what I wanted to do is I wanted to take a little bit of time and talk with you about 5 reasons why nationwide martial law could never be imposed here at the United States. And why am I talking about this? Well, as you guys know, there's a lot of videos out there that talk about martial law, and these videos, they impose fear, and it's a lot of fear mongering that is basically it's total BS. There's no reason whatsoever to fear a nationwide martial law situation. It just physically can't happen, and I'll take you through the 5 reasons why that is. So I guess the first thing that we really should probably take a look at is let's just understand that we don't have enough troops to do this in total. So I guess the first thing we have to do is we got to look at how many troops do we have. Okay, so the U.S. military has approximately, including all active duty and National Guard and reservists, has approximately 2 million troops. If we add to that all the law enforcement troops in the United States, which is actually about 756,000 as of a few years ago. So let's say that it's increased tremendously. We'll give it 1 million, right? So now we're talking about having the capability of having 3 million soldiers and or law enforcement officers, okay, to be able to do martial law here in the United States. We're gonna for argument's sake, just to show how this is so not even possible, I'm gonna say that every single one of those troops would be available to be on the street, imposing curfews and blocking the roads and all that kind of stuff. But you should know that is a physical impossibility, right? Because you need support troops, you need logistics troops, you need medical troops, you need mechanics, you need cooks, you need all these different things, right? And a realistic number to put to this is probably about anywhere from 3 to 5 soldiers to be able to support one combat soldier, and that's actually low. I've seen estimates as high as 10 to 1. And for the Air Force, some people have said it's as high as 30 to 1. But we're going to, just for the sake of argument, we're going to say every one of those 3 million troops was a frontline soldier, okay? So let's look at one big city. Let's just take a look at one big city and just try to come up with an idea of how many people it would take to impose martial law on Chicago, for example. Okay, and Chicago is a pretty good estimate, and it's a great place to look at, given the way that it behaves currently, right? So the question that comes to mind is, well, how many law enforcement officers are currently in Chicago? Well, Chicago Police Department employs about 12,000-ish police officers. Okay, so is anybody under the illusion that if we doubled the police force in Chicago that they would be able to control the city? I mean, I don't know who would think that, because they don't have any control in it now. So just doubling it isn't going to do it. I think you'd be generous and say, let's make it 5 times the number, something like that. But even then, are you when you're looking at it, are you really going to be able? If you had 60,000 troops, that's one van of 5 police officers instead of just 1 officer per car, would they be able to block off all the roads? Would they be able to have total control of who's coming and going? Would they be able to enforce a curfew strictly across the city? You're looking at a population just in the city limits of Chicago of 3 million people just in the city limits. Now that doesn't include the greater metro area. So that's 3 million people. So I'm gonna go out on a limb here, and I'm gonna say that you probably, to be able to pull this off with the logistics, with all those things considered, with having 2 shifts, because you're gonna have to have at least 2 shifts of if you're working 12 hours a day, the soldiers can't work 24 hours a day, so you're gonna have to have that's at least another 50 or 60,000, right? So we're up to just the frontline troops. We're probably looking at 100,000 or so. Then if you only did, say 3-to-1 on the support and logistics troops, then you're looking at having 400,000 people or so right there in Chicago just to control the city limits. Okay. Now, let's expand that out into the metro area. Well, the total metro population of Chicago is 9 million people. So, how many people are you going to have to control the whole metro area? This is getting to be a very big number. You're probably looking at more than 1 million people just to control the majority of the Chicago metro area. Which, it's just, there's only, like I said, there's only about 3 million or so military and law enforcement available for the entire nation. So maybe in the best case scenario, in a good case scenario, you take all the law enforcement officers and pull them out of all the towns everywhere across the country, and you focus them on Los Angeles, Chicago, and New York. The military may be able to control those areas, in a strict martial law type situation. Let's be generous. We'll cut that in a third, and say, okay, they're doing it on a shoestring budget worth of men. Their control that they're imposing is very loose. We'll say that they could control 10 cities, 10 of the biggest cities in the United States, and that is being overly generous. It's being way more generous than what it is in reality, because when you start looking at the logistics and the support that the troops need, it just kills these numbers, right? We're giving them the huge benefit of the doubt here. So, realistically, maybe 3, let's say 5 cities. In a stretch, we're saying maybe 10. Okay, 10 big cities that could be potentially controlled if it had to be. But so that's reason one. We just don't have the troops to do nationwide martial law. Okay, so if you're not in one of the 10 biggest cities in the United States, you really don't have anything to worry about. But I'll explain why even then in reality you don't. So let's look at the second reason. Okay, the second thing is the servicemen and the officers, they're not going to comply with this order. They're not going to comply with the situation where you're talking about gun confiscations and suspending habeas corpus, taking people's constitutional rights. It's just a fantasy to think that the patriots and the men and women that serve in uniform are going to want to do that to their families and to their relatives and that kind of stuff. Yes, we've seen small regional instances throughout history where that's happened, and reasons that were, according to the administration, justifiable for those times and periods and that kind of stuff. It was on a very limited scale, and it was in limited certain specific regionalized instances. thinking that all the troops would be willing to sit and do this and comply with those orders is absolutely ludicrous. If you don't believe me, talk to a veteran. Talk to somebody who's in the military. Ask them these questions. The Constitution is so ingrained into soldiers and law enforcement officers that if you could get half, it would be an amazing feat to do half. And I believe personally that 75% would say hell no, and they would walk away. And I believe that with every fiber of my being. I've served with the military for 20 years, been in law enforcement for 17 of that, working with law enforcement officers side by side in many cases, and I've never seen examples of people who would blindly follow orders like that. It's just not a reality. Okay, so, and I kind of combined a little bit on the first one. The third point that I had is that it would essentially take every single one of those troops to just occupy 5 of the biggest cities. But like I said, let's give them credit. We'll say they're going to do it halfway. Then maybe they could cover 10 cities, 10 big cities. Okay. Well, the fourth point, and the reason another reason why it's just not believable is you got to realize you're pulling every sailor off of every boat that we have. You're pulling them in to be on the ground doing a ground mission. So there's nobody guarding our borders. There's nobody out on any ships. There's no Air Force flying because imposing this is a situation where you have to have boots on the ground in order to impose martial law. There might be a certain degree of flights for reconnaissance and different things like that, but for the majority, those troops would all have to be actually on the ground to impose this will on the people. So there's no one left to defend the country from foreign invasion if they were all worried about people in the United States. The government would never allow that to happen. They would never do that. It would be against their own self-interest in keeping power. They wouldn't have any benefit in doing this because other countries would then see that and take advantage of it. So that it's just not going to happen. So then here's probably the fifth and the most important reason why this will never take place. The United States population is armed at a rate of 30-1 over the armed forces and law enforcement officers. 30-1. That's 30 people who have guns against one soldier that has a gun. Okay? Those odds are impossible. Completely impossible. You have 100 million plus gun owners in the country, according to some estimates. And some estimate it's much higher than that. So, that's a conservative estimate. So you're looking at 30-1 outnumbered and outgunned, and those people are on their own home turf. They know their own areas. I mean, it's a tactical impossibility for anybody to think that you could maintain any sort of law and order for any period of time with that few number of people over such a large population. It's just a fantasy. I mean, it really is. And I understand that this hurts a lot of people's feelings, and they think that I'm a government shill and that, I'm whatever. That's fine. You can think whatever you want. But let me tell you what what the military would really do in a situation where there was a lot of chaos and where they had to preserve the stability of the United States. You can look up continuity of government or continuity of operations for government. And essentially what they would end up doing is they would end up guarding critical infrastructure. That's what they're going to do. They're going to guard critical infrastructure. They're going to guard ports, rivers, bridges, freeways, electrical grid, nuclear power plants, municipal utility systems like water and sewage and that kind of thing, airports, military bases. They're gonna maintain their defensive capability so that we don't get attacked and those kinds of things. They're gonna keep the strategic systems operational so that they can still operate as a fighting force. So that's a reality. And I hope you understand this. I mean, I'm not trying to be offensive to anyone. I'm not trying to, I'm really just trying to get you to understand that it's not something you need to worry about. Fear-based prepping, in my opinion, is a bad way to go. It's a bad thing to do. There's nothing wrong with having a healthy, being suspect of the government, and because governments, worldwide have been the number one killer of people in the 20th century and into the 21st, but our government hasn't been, and so socialist and communist governments have been, and that's where people have been disarmed. So our country is different than other countries. We have an armed populace, and the only way that you could see anything more than maybe 10 cities is if the entire population was disarmed. And I think everybody listening to this and watching this knows that that is not going to happen. There would be a civil war before that happens. So it's just really not anything that you need to worry about. So anyway, that's pretty much my take on this. That's kind of the 5 big reasons why I do not believe whatsoever that the United States military and law enforcement officers in this country, all of them combined, could effectively occupy more than 3 to 5 cities realistically, and giving them the way huge benefit of the doubt, 10 or so cities. So if you live in an outlying area, if you live in a suburban area, if you live somewhere in the flyover country in the middle, you don't have anything to worry about. Now, if you live in one of the 10 biggest cities, maybe it could be a situation that could be something that could affect you. But in that case, you're going to want to try to get out of the cities as soon as possible if something bad happens. Because it's going to take time. It's going to take significant amounts of time to move the military in and put a blockade in to keep people from getting in and out. So if you keep your ear to the ground, you focus on gathering information, intelligence, and good, reliable news and that kind of thing, then you should easily be able to get out of the city before they're able to, put any kind of blockade or anything like that in. So anyway, guys, as always, I would love to hear your opinions. You can tell me how I'm wrong. You can troll me and tell me that I'm a government shill or whatever the case may be. But I just needed to give a little dose of reality because I see so much stuff about this on prepper videos and the comment section and all this kind of stuff. And it's just not something to worry about. But anyway, guys, as always, I definitely appreciate it when you click the thumbs up button, when you share it with your friends on Facebook, Twitter, and Google+. And don't forget to live the 6 Ps. Proper prior preparation prevents poor performance. Stay safe, guys.